Don't miss your own life, the Buddha's secret to letting go forever. Every evening at sunset, the Buddha has you remind yourself, this could be your last sunset. You might go tonight. Are you ready to go? Then you look into your mind. If you see that there's anything in there that would pull you back, make it difficult to go well, work on that. Look into your mind. What do you have here? There's another place where the Buddha said that when you go from this body to another body, you cling to craving. You often hear about clinging to the 5 aggregates, but here, he said, you're clinging to craving, the craving that led to the clinging to begin with. You turn around and hold on to that. That's what pulls you along. So you look at the kind of cravings you might have at that point, and 3 big ones stand out. The ones that the Buddha said are the cause for suffering. Craving for sensuality, craving for becoming, craving for non-becoming. Craving for sensuality usually comes from our attachment to our sensual pleasures and our fascination with thinking about sensual pleasures. At the moment of death, of course, you'll be pulled back to pleasures of the past. There can be a lot of nostalgia. You miss this, you miss that, this person, that situation, and it's painful. As the Buddha said, you've got to see the drawbacks of sensuality. You could come back and have those pleasures again. But many times, the particulars of the pleasures that you really enjoyed are gone forever. I notice every time I go back to Thailand how much things have changed, and I keep thinking, where is the Thailand I used to know? Yesterday, someone sent me the transcription of the talk I gave about the old woman who died a few weeks ago, at the age of 100. I started thinking about the way we lived back in those days when I first met her and her family, how simple life in the countryside was. Although there were hardships, still there's a lot to get nostalgic about. And if you let yourself get nostalgic, it's painful. As the Buddha said, you have to develop lack of nostalgia, analayo, for your cravings. So if you see anything come up, that you wish you could have this back again, or that back again, or you start going for sensuality that might be better, saying, the things I wish I had that I never got this time, you've got to learn how to let it go. Remind yourself of all the work that goes into that. Ajahn Fuang had a good contemplation for that. He says the sensual pleasures that you really long for are ones you've had before. You long for them because you miss them. Think about that. You miss them, so you try to get them again. And then, of course, you're going to lose them again, and you're going to miss them again. He says if you think about this, it's enough to make you want to go for release. So learn to think in that way. All the particulars you go for, you're going to have to lose them again and again and again. And you have to ask yourself, when will you have had enough? Because pleasures of this sort never really give satisfaction. There's always something lacking. There's a spot in the north rim of the Grand Canyon, a meadow that I really like. Last year, I was there at the north rim. So I took a hike, got to the meadow, and had given myself a certain amount of time. Then I was going to have to turn around and go back. I got there and I realized I had only 10 minutes for the meadow. My first thought as I sat down was, I hope I can come here again. I hadn't even been there for a minute, and already I was thinking about the next time. That's what you've got to watch out for, the thoughts that say, I'd like to have that again. Or again, as I said, there are pleasures that you missed. You say, next time around, I'd like to come back for that pleasure. Beauty, wealth, power, anything that has to do with the senses, your nostalgia for it, or your disappointment that you didn't get it this time and you'd like to try it again. That's going to pull you back, and it's going to pull you down. So see the drawbacks of sensuality. Think of all the work that has to go into it, and then it's just going to slip through your fingers. All too often, in gaining sensual pleasures, we end up doing unskillful things either to get them or to keep them, and they still go through our fingers, and we're left holding nothing but the karma. That's one form of craving you've got to watch out for. If you find yourself clinging to it, you've got to learn how to pry loose the fingers of the mind. They keep wanting to hold on. Then there's craving for becoming. You think about the different things you didn't get to do or be in this lifetime, and you say, I'd like to take on that identity. This was a topic of discussion I had many times with some of the farmers back in Thailand. I tried to get them to meditate. They'd say, we're in no greater hurry to meditate right now. We want to make merit, be generous, so we can come back wealthy next time. One of the advantages of being a monk is that you meet members of all levels of society. You meet wealthy people and you begin to realize they suffer too. They suffer in a different way from the poor people, but they suffer. People with power suffer. I knew a monk in Thailand who had psychic powers for a while, and he was not very circumspect in how he showed them off, so he attracted some very high-ranking government officials. They would come to him and complain about one another, basically, their opponents or rivals in trying to govern the country. And he told me one time, it's like talking to 4-year-olds, talking to these people, the resentments, the feuds, the desires for revenge. So poor people suffer the way poor people suffer. Rich people suffer the way rich people suffer. Devas have their suffering. Everywhere you can go, there's going to be suffering. That chant we have on the 5 recollections, it's only a part of the sutta. The other part of the sutta says, it's not just me. All beings everywhere are subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to death, subject to separation, and they live by their karma. When you reflect on those 5 recollections only with reference to yourself, the Buddha says, it makes you heedful. When you reflect on the fact that wherever you could go in the universe, whatever state of becoming you could take on, is subject to these 5 principles. That, he says, gives rise to the samvega that gives rise to the path. So remember, whatever identity you could take on could have some pretty nasty details in the fine print. If you can think of it that way, it's easier to let go of the desire to come back and be anything at all in any world. Then there's craving for non-becoming. A good way to look for this is to look at times when you think back on things you did and you regret, or things you didn't do and you regret, the stupid things you said, the stupid things you did. You realize that that particular identity is one that makes you very uncomfortable. You don't like the idea that that's you, and you'd like to destroy that memory, destroy that identity. Well, in doing so, you take on a new identity. As the Buddha said, one of his great insights was seeing that in the desire for non-becoming, there was becoming. So if you find the mind slipping in any of these things, nostalgia for sensual pleasures, or the desire for new sensual pleasures you didn't have, the desire to take on any state of being on any level of the universe, or the desire to destroy some aspect of you in terms of things you did and said, where you look back on it and you said, I wish I could just get rid of that memory. All these things, you've got to see them as burdens that will weigh you down. So you take the proper antidotes. For sensuality, if it has to do with lust, you start with the contemplation of the body, and then you look at the drawbacks of sensuality in general. For becoming, you remember, everything is subject to aging, illness, and death. Every identity, And as for any desire to destroy a particular memory of something you did unskillfully, that's going to give rise to more becoming, which goes back to aging, illness, and death all over again. So these are the things you have to watch out for. And these are the antidotes you use. You have to use them again and again and again for them to really sink in. As with any directed thought and evaluation, if you do it once, it's not going to go very deep into the mind because here you are talking to yourself. It may be with a voice that you're not used to hearing or an attitude or a perspective you're not used to seeing things from. So you have to work on it again and again and again until these thoughts come more easily, more quickly. After all, at the moment of death, you're going to need them to come fast because your cravings are fast. They see they can't stay here, and they're going to immediately look for something else. You've got to make sure they don't pull you in the wrong direction. So work on these antidotes and take a good dose of them every day. Contemplation of the drawbacks of sensuality, contemplation of the undesirability of any state of being, any state of becoming, and the realization that regret about how much you want to destroy a memory, destroy a sense of who you were, will take you back to states of becoming all over again. Keep these antidotes in your medicine chest and take a good, healthy dose every day. The Dhamma bucket list. How short this life. That's how one of the Buddha's poems begins. And it goes on to say that even if you have a long life, it's just 100 years. And that's not much. And it's not that at the end of 100 years, you'll have all those 100 years you can live through at your leisure and focus on the really nice times. It's all gone. As the Thais say, time eats up beings as it eats up itself. And as that reflection goes, that we chant fairly often, aging is normal, as the Thais would translate it. We translate it as we're subject to aging, but it's normal. This is what comes to all of us if we don't die first. And it's a matter of concern, not just for people who have been around a long time, but for everybody. You realize that this body you've got is just going to leave you. It starts going away bit by bit by bit, and the parts that go away don't ask permission. They don't give you any warning when they're going to leave. So as Ajahn Mahabua used to say, try to squeeze as much goodness out of the body as you can while you have the opportunity. There was a woman who went to see him one time after she was diagnosed with cancer and not given too long to live. She wanted to meditate with him to get herself ready to die. And he told her, well, I can take care of your mind, but I can't take care of your body. If you're going to come and stay here, you're going to need to bring a doctor. So she had an old doctor friend, a retired doctor, a woman in her 80s, who went along and sat and meditated with her, listened to the Dhamma talks together with her. Ajahn Mahabua gave then about 80 Dhamma talks during the 3 months they were there. After they returned to Bangkok, the woman with cancer died several months later. And then her friend the doctor realized that she had all these cassette tapes of these really wonderful talks. She remembered what Ajahn Mahabua had said, that as you're getting older, you want to still squeeze as much goodness as you can out of your body. The image is like squeezing juice out of a fruit. Sometimes you look in a garbage can and see fruit that's been partially squeezed. There's still a lot of juice there, but it's been thrown away. You realize what a waste it is. As long as you have to throw the body away, you might as well squeeze all the juice out of it, all the goodness that you can do. So the old woman decided to transcribe the Dhamma talks. Her eyesight was failing and she wasn't all that strong, It took her a while, but she managed to transcribe all the talks. Ended up with 2 huge volumes. Here she was in her 80s, and she could still do that. She was proud of the fact, rightly so. So as you face the issue of aging, that's what you should think about. You've still got things your body can do. Try to squeeze the goodness out of them, using whatever capabilities you still have left, because you don't know when they're going to leave you. But while you have the opportunity, make the most of it. There are 2 ways to prepare for this. One is to think in the long term. You can make yourself a Dhamma bucket list. They call it a bucket list because they're things you want to do before you kick the bucket. For most people, the list is composed of experiences they want to have or places they want to travel to. Basically, ways of spending money, getting some fleeting experience, and then being able to chalk it up. Well, I was able to do that before I died. But that's pretty insubstantial. You want to think instead about what are some of the good things you want to accomplish before you go. What's some good you want to leave behind in the world? And here, you can think in terms of the perfections, because the good you leave behind in the world is also good that you build into your mind. The good qualities you develop: generosity, virtue, renunciation, discernment, persistence, endurance, truth, determination, goodwill, equanimity. Which of these qualities is lacking in your mind? See if you can squeeze some of that out of your activities. And how would you go about developing those qualities? You can develop them in daily life. You can develop them by making up your mind you're going to make a special donation, or you decide to observe the precepts more than you have in the past, or meditate more than you have in the past. As Ajahn Fuang would put it, leave behind a monument of your goodness. So think of that in terms of the long term. As for the immediate term, day to day, make the most of each day as it comes. The Buddha says, as the sun rises in the morning, remind yourself that this might be the last time you see the sunrise. You could die so easily during the day. Ajahn Lee makes this point, saying that death is waiting right around the corner, and it can happen so easily. A slight little accident, a slight miscalculation, some slight little thing in your body, a little germ gets into the body and then decides to settle in and leave behind lots of descendants. You never know what's going to happen, but you do know that you have today. So ask yourself, what qualities do I have in the mind that would make it difficult for me to go? Am I ready to go? And the answer usually is no, I'm not ready. Okay, what's keeping you? What unfinished business do you have? Well, do that. What unskillful qualities of the mind might take over? Learn how to fight those unskillful qualities. What are the ones that you tend to give into very easily? Learn how to fight them. Make that your top priority for the day. I heard of a woman general in the army here in the States who made a habit every day of making a list of the 10 most important things that needed to be done that day, and then crossing through everything except 1 and 2, and focusing on those. Now, maybe you can't make a list of what your unskillful habits are, but try and have a sense, okay, what needs work? And realize, okay, today is my opportunity to do that work. The same early at night when the sun sets, remind yourself, this could be my last sunset. The night is not just for sleeping. It's quiet. It's cooler. It's time to work on the mind. What would get in the way if you had to go in the night? What unfinished business needs to be done? Well, do that. There is another passage where the Buddha says, you can make it even more stringent. Each time you breathe in and breathe out, remind yourself that this might be my last breath. what would be a good thing to do with it? Because when the Buddha is talking about being in the present moment, he never says because it's a wonderful place to be, or because you access an unconditioned awareness just by simply being in the present. He says you focus on being in the present because there's work to be done, and this is the time to do it. Ajava kichamatapam. Do today what needs to be done today. Because tomorrow, who knows? But you know that you do have this breath. You do have this day. And if you have in the back of your mind that list of the good things you want to accomplish, that can give some guidance to what to do right now. That way, you can find what Ajahn Fuang called the brightness of life. He once said that's what he owed to Ajahn Lee. Ajahn Lee showed him the brightness of life. When we talk about sunset years, that's the kind of brightness you want to have at the sunset. The brightness of a mind that's developed good qualities inside. A mind that's found something inside that is of real value. Because you look at life as it's normally lived. Everybody has families, and the families grow up, and people tend to go their separate ways. You work on projects. The people who work together on the project go their separate ways. Sometimes the project gets completed, but then gets wiped out. I was riding with my father one time. I'd been visiting him and my brother. So we decided to go back Charlottesville, where 30 years before we had built a house. So we drove by to see what condition the house was in, and it was in pretty sad condition. The new owners hadn't taken good care of it. On the way back, we dropped my brother off in Richmond and continued driving to Williamsburg, and Dad commented, "You know, I have nothing to show for my life." He talked about not only the house, but also the time when he was a farmer. He'd spent all year growing potatoes, and then word came down from the government. Throw the potatoes away. There are too many potatoes in the market. He ended up selling the farm and getting a job with the government, worked on the Water Resources Council. And then a very conservative president came along and abolished the Water Resources Council because it wasn't business friendly. As he said, there was nothing to show for all that work. So if you're looking to validate yourself in terms of what the world thinks or what you leave behind in the world, you're setting yourself up for a fall. But if you validate yourself in terms of the good qualities you build into the mind, you've got something safe. If you're generous, you're helping the world. But if for some reason the traces of your generosity get wiped out in the world, you've still got the quality of generosity in your heart and mind. If you've worked hard at being virtuous, doing a good job with your career, and if for some reason what you did and your career gets wiped out, you've still got the virtue in your heart and mind. These things don't leave you. They're part of your noble treasures, and they're treasures that make life bright. When Ajahn Fuang was talking about the brightness of life, that's what he was talking about. Not the fact that you can say, "Hey, I traveled here and I traveled there, and I tasted this food and I had that experience," and all the things that other people put on their bucket list. The brightness lies in the virtue, generosity, all the perfections you put on your bucket list. With what time you have left and what abilities remain in the body, squeeze those perfections out of the body, because you're squeezing out brightness. And not only is it bright for your own mind, but you also leave behind a bright example. Whoever knows of your life will see something good, something inspiring. That way, in your sunset years as the body fades, maybe your memory fades, but still the goodness is bright. And even though you may not even get to live 100 years, still it's a flash of brightness, and it'll be a memorial in your mind. Even if your memory goes, there is something deeper in your mind than your memory, where these things are maintained.